Guys, my bed is covered in books, which means we're filming a book video, specifically a book recommendation video. Let's do this. So if you don't follow Steph Bower, you probably are living under a rock because she's one of the biggest booktubers on YouTube. And yesterday she actually posted a video called a book recommendation tag and basically just answered a bunch of questions and showed different books to recommend. I loved the video, I thought it was so good, and I loved all the questions that she came up with. So I thought I would do this. I'm hopping on the train that Steph Bower started, and I'm very excited because I thought the questions were so fun and I'll be able to talk about books. Honestly, I've already talked about most of these books, but I'll be able to talk about them again. Okay, so I will put the questions below if you want to film this video too. Also, if you don't have a YouTube or a booktube, you should comment them below your answers to these questions so I'll know, because I think they are such fun questions. I literally cannot speak English. So first question is a book you tell people is your favorite, and if you know me, you're not gonna be surprised by any of this answer specifically. And that is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino and yours truly by Abby Jimenez. I talk about these books all the time and I'm obsessed with them. They are so good. Like, you need to read them. This is a second chance romance, childhood friends to lovers in New York City. They meet in college at NYU and then, you know, something happens. They don't talk for 15 years and then they reunite, and it's just so good. I've had people read it because of me, which literally makes me so honored, and I'm so happy that those of you that enjoyed it. So anyways, my favorite book, so good. And the next is yours truly by Abby Jimenez. This book has not released yet, so I'm so sorry, but it comes out in April and that is very soon. So you should pre-order it and read it when it comes out. It is, if you've read Part of Your World, it is following Alexis, I think it's her name, best friend Bree, and then Bree is a doctor and she meets this other doctor named Jacob, and you get like their story in this book. It is, has great mental health representation, specifically with anxiety. One thing I love about Abby Jimenez's books is that she writes about hard topics, but she makes it like lighthearted and enjoyable and like not super like emotional, you know what I mean? So I love this book so much. I cannot wait to reread it. But these two, my favorite books, and I'm obsessed with them. A book that is your guilty pleasure. I feel like I was having a hard time answering this question because I feel like most books that I talk about or that I love, I talk about, because specifically this question was like, this is a book you tell people is your favorite, and then a book that is your favorite but you just don't tell people. And this book, I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favorite, but it is like a guilty pleasure. I don't really talk about it that much. I probably wouldn't recommend it, but it is the Addicted series, specifically Hot House Flower by Kristen Becker-Ritchie. I kind of love these books. They are so spicy, like the spiciest books I've ever read, and that's why I don't really recommend them, because if you're not new to my channel, you know that I mostly recommend like closed door, minimal spice. Like, I try to read books with minimal spice, but these books are just so good. It's like a found family with these sisters and their significant others, and they're just so good. And specifically Hot House Flower, I love Reich. I love him. He is literally so great. He does cuss like a sailor. He says that for like every other sentence, but I really like him. I think he is so sweet. As of right now, I'm on like the 7th book. The last book I read was Thrive. He's my favorite. I really like Reich. I mean, I like Glow. Connor, I'm not the biggest fan of. I kind of like him, but Reich is like my favorite. So I love the series. I think it's so good. I just don't really talk about it that much because it's so spicy. Like, you gotta cover your eyes sometimes because it's a lot. Specifically, Kiss the Sky. Oof, no. It's a lot of spice. Anyways, a book everyone loved but you didn't. I have to do it. I have to say ACOTAR. I'm so sorry, but that's what's gonna have to be. This is the first book, obviously, in the ACOTAR series. I did a whole reading vlog reading this book if you want to watch it. I'm gonna link it below. I was kind of disappointed by it because I felt like it wasn't a lot going on until like the last 100 pages, which for me, I'm like, I want to pick up pretty quickly, and I get that it's a fantasy, but I've read fantasy in the past that picks up after like 50 pages, so I feel like it was very slow in getting going, and also it's kind of confusing. So, but I hadn't read any other fantasy with the Fae, so maybe that was my fault, but that's my answer. A book you read the fastest. So honestly, a lot of books I will read kind of in one sitting because I can't stop. So I have a few that I read, I'm pretty sure, in one sitting, so I guess I would consider it the fastest. First one is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. Loved this book, so cute, and I did a whole reading vlog reading this book. I literally read it basically in one sitting. So good. Small town celebrity romance with a pie shop owner, like a small town pie shop owner. So she's a celebrity and he's a pie shop owner in a small town. So cute. Then we have It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. I also did a reading vlog with this, and I also read it in one sitting. Loved it so much. It's the second book after It Ends With Us. I personally loved it. A lot of people didn't, but I ate it up. I loved it so much. And then Lisa in Love by Fallon Ballard. All these books were in my top 10 of 2022, so you probably heard me talk about them, but this is a forced proximity roommates to lovers situation in New York City, and I just loved it. I thought it was so cute. highly recommend this one as well. I guess I should say spice levels. Pretty much all the books I just mentioned have spice, except When in Rome is closed door. So also recently just read My Phony Valentine, and I also read that like in one sitting, so I couldn't stop. But I feel like I have a problem and I do that a lot. But anyways, a book that deserves more hype. So I have a couple books that I've read in the past couple months that I think should be talked about more. First is Dream On by Angie Hockman. I loved this book. I thought it was so cute, and the only reviews I've really heard about it are not good reviews, and I really loved it. It's closed door, and I loved it. It was basically like this girl wakes up from a car accident remembering this guy named Devin, and her parents are like, or her family and her friends are like, he doesn't exist, and you kind of go from there. But it's so much more than that, and I really, really loved it. And then I recently read Would You Rather by Allison Ashley. I read this in a romance reading blog, and I loved it. I thought it was so cute. I feel like no one's talking about this book, and we should be talking about it. So this one deserves more hype, and this one deserves more hype. This one is a friends to lovers marriage of convenience, which is so fun. Well, best friends to lovers, so they're very like close best friends, and they have a marriage of convenience, which I loved. So highly recommend those books. Next is a book that is becoming a movie or a TV show. No one is surprised. Daisy Jones and the Six. This comes out March 3rd, and I'm so excited. Like, it's gonna be so good because this book is so good. It's one of my favorite books. I just can't get enough of it. It is so good. Highly recommend reading it if you haven't, especially with the show coming out, and there's music coming out with the show because this is about a band in the 70s. And it's basically told in like interview style where this person is interviewing the band, like how did y'all get together, why did you break up, all that stuff, and you get all the deets about the band, this fictional band, and how the Six rose to fame, how Daisy Jones rose to fame, how they ended up being a band together, all that stuff. And the preview or like the trailer for this show looks so good. Okay, a book you have reread the most. So I had to do it. The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I've read this book so many times. I haven't read it in a long time, but when it first came out, I'm pretty sure I read it like 3 times, 4 times. I don't remember, but loved it so much. You know. I don't have to say much about this. You know. It's so good. Obviously, it's Fault in Our Stars. You've probably read it. You've probably watched the movie. I've watched the movie probably like 5 times. This was in the era before I realized, my dogs, that you could read books and not be heartbroken at the end, because this one really breaks your heart at the end. But it's also so good. Next, a book from a genre you don't typically read. So first, I have Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. These are fantasy romances, enemies to lovers fantasy romance. They were like basically the first fantasy books that I read, and I love them so much. Some of my favorite books of 2022, specifically Vow of Thieves, and I highly, highly recommend them. You should read them. So good. Like, this one is, you're on the edge of your seat, and this one, so good. Highly recommend you to read them, and I'm so happy that I got into fantasy with these books, and I want more books like these. Like, if you have recommendations that make you feel like these books make me feel, or they give you the same feeling, let me know, because I love them. And then another book is kind of not in, like, it's still in a genre I read, but like the subject isn't. I'm just gonna show you. So The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This book is like a magical realism where the male main character is a ghost, which I don't normally read, so that's kind of giving different than I normally read, so that's why I'm putting it in here. And I love this book. It's perfect for fall if you wanted to wait till fall to read it, but also it's just so good. Highly recommend. A book that deserves all the hype it gets. So I had to do it. Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This book has so much hype, and it's worth it. It's so good. Like, honestly, a lot of these books are hyped, and I think they're worth the hype, but specifically this one, I loved it so much. It's basically about Archer and Bree. Bree goes to this small town. She's like running away from her life, and she meets Archer, who doesn't speak to her when they first meet, and he isn't really talked highly about around the town, but she's intrigued. So she gets to know him, and yeah, so good. Very emotional vibes, but highly recommend. Okay, a book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. So I have a few because I have a problem with picking one. So I'm giving some broad, okay, things are falling. I'm giving some broad recommendations here because I feel like if I recommend a book, these are the books I recommend. So first, anything by Sarah Adams. I love When in Rome. I love The Cheat Sheet. So good. And then I also love Abby Jimenez. Anything by her, I recommend. I think they're so good. And they're, I feel like, finally getting hype, especially the Friend Zone series. And I highly recommend them. I think they're so good. I always recommend them because I feel like they're good, like, romances, but they also, like, make you feel things. And then I always recommend It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line, and Sinker because they're so good. But specifically, I will say if, like, you like spice, you'll like these books. But I also think they're just so good in general. Like, I loved specifically Hook, Line, and Sinker, but I loved It Happened One Summer too. They're very spicy, but such good books. Like, highly recommend. Not as spicy as the Addicted series, but I always recommend these, specifically like these authors or this like duology, like It Happened One Summer, Hook, Line, and Sinker, because I think they're so good, and I feel like a lot of people will like them. Also, I think I'm gonna put this in with a book that I recommend when people ask for a recommendation because I love this book. It's The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. It's like this girl is a bodyguard for the celebrity and she ends up having to be like his fake girlfriend because they're going home to his family. But it's so good. I love this. I read it basically in one sitting on Christmas Eve and it was so good. I highly recommend it. And it is closed door as well. Sarah Adams, Closed Door. Ivy Jimenez has some spice, and then Glenn Tinker, like Tessa Bailey, a good bit of spice. Next is a book that has your favorite characters. So I couldn't decide. I have a lot of favorite characters, but I'm going Shatter Me. I'm really doing it because I love the Shatter Me series so much, and these characters I love so much. They're just so great. So I'm going with that. It's like a dystopian fantasy situation. If you haven't heard me talk about it, you probably live under a rock because I talk about it so much. I also have a review on my Bookstagram if you want like an in-depth of what it's all about, like should you read the novellas, spice level, all that stuff, you should go there. But it's like minimal spice, YA kind of, but as you read it gets spicier a little bit, but not too much. It's still YA. So anyways, a book you wish you could live in, I have to say the Love Light series in Inglewild, I think is what it's called. It's like a small town, super cute vibes, has a Christmas tree farm, a flower shop. It just sounds so great. I want to live there. And then Rome, Kentucky, where the Rome series is based, where When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect are in. I read Practice Makes Perfect early. I got an arc of it, and it's so good, so I would want to live there in those towns. So cute. A book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. We all knew it was coming. The Magnolia Parks universe. I know. So I read Magnolia Parks, the first one, a couple of years ago in like 2021 when it first came out, and I did not like it. But I think it's because I didn't know what to expect going into it. I didn't know it was toxic. I didn't know the ending was a cliffhanger, so I didn't love it. And then in January, I picked up Daisy Hates. I don't own that, but I'm going to get the copy of Daisy Hates soon so I can own all of them, but like physical copies, because I read Daisy Hates on Kindle Unlimited. But here it is. I read it in January and was obsessed, and so I ordered the next two books in the series, which is Magnolia Parks: A Long Way Home. What is on this? No. Anyways, and then Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. I like literally ate these up. I could not stop. And I also read these in a romance reading vlog that I posted recently, so if you want to see my reactions. But I thought I was gonna hate it, and initially I didn't like it, but now I'm obsessed, and I love this series. I love this universe, and I cannot wait for more books to come out. There's one more in the Magnolia part of the series and two more in the Daisy part of the series, and I'm so excited. I think right now my favorite is Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. I just loved it so much, but I loved all of them, but The Long Way Home was so good too. They're just so good. Highly recommend, but know what you're getting into because they're very toxic, but I think they just show the imperfections of like humanity, and also that you can learn from your mistakes and still like grow and become a better person. Okay, Bethany, you're making it too deep, but that's how I feel about them, and I feel like they made me thankful for a savior that I can turn to when things like go wrong in my life, because a lot of things go wrong in these books. So anyways, okay, next, a book that made you cry. So honestly, Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. I bawled my eyes out in this book, probably the most that I've ever cried. But next to that is All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. I also have a reading vlog of this, and I just lost it. I could not control myself. I bawled my eyes out. It's like a then and now second chance romance kind of with a married couple. You're following them in the past where they met and fell in love, and then in the present where they're struggling in their marriage. And I would check trigger warnings for this before you read it because there is a pretty big trigger warning in the majority of this book, but I did love it so much, but I did bawl my eyes out. And then lastly, a book you wish you could read for the first time. So I can't find any of the books I'm looking for. Of course I would say Before We Were Strangers and yours truly, specifically Before We Were Strangers. I feel like I would love to reread again, but I'm gonna go with the Shatter Me series. I feel like I would just love to experience this world all over again. Like I wish I could read it over again and like read about Warner again and him and Juliet and all the characters and not know what happens next. I think that'd be so fun to not know what happens next in these books, but I can't. So I'm just gonna beg you to read them and hope that you enjoy them because they're so good. So good. That is all of the questions and all the books I'd recommend. I had a great time. I saw stuff forward to this video and I was like, it looks so fun, and I love that the questions are kind of like open-ended. You can use really all kinds of books that you want, and I feel like you get a good grasp of like all the books that I like in one video. But I think that's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon for my next one. Bye.